Okay, welcome back, class. So in this one, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of this metal grate and this. So we just have our two layers here, our bricks and our red plastic. Okay, so I'm going to go back first up to object level, and let's go inside the shader ball. All right, and I'm going to go back to my scene view here. Okay, so we have something like this. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to go ahead and add and mix these shaders, but I only want to add maybe say that brick in a certain area. Okay, so what I could do, there's a couple ways I can do that. The first way is I can paint areas on my piece of geometry here where I want maybe that brick shader to show. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and hit tab. I'm going to just type in paint, and I'm going to use the paint attributes node here. Okay, so I'm going to lay that down. Let's go ahead, we'll connect that. Let's visualize it and display it. And then to activate this, let's go down over here on the left-hand side to this icon here where we can toggle the handle here. So this should turn purple, and then if I hover over, we should see a little cursor here used to act as a paintbrush. Okay. So a couple things I can do. If we take a look at this attribute paint, the attribute, I can go ahead and what I'm painting here is the mask. So by default, we get this mask to paint. If I go head over to attributes, I can go ahead and change the name of this, okay? And I can change what type this is, okay? So I'll keep it as a float, but maybe I'll change this to, actually, you know what? Let's just keep it as mask. That looks good. We'll keep it as mask, but I can change that if I want. And I can add multiple attributes on here if I want as well, okay? So if I come up here, you see some different operations. A left mouse button will paint, middle mouse button will paint. I can change these as well. So I can change this to smooth, erase, control will erase, control shift will act as an eyedropper, and then paint mode, over, add, the shape, you know, do I want to paint on the surface like so, which is probably what I want to do. You can see I don't get a 3D paint like I do with volume, okay? So maybe for this example, I'll just put it to surface, okay? And then what I can do is I can just, and if I want to bring down the size of this brush here, I can go down to radius, and I can bring this down, and you can see it makes this smaller. All right, so you can see that I can just left click and I can just start painting on this geometry. Now, keep in mind also the more geometry you have, meaning the more subdivisions, the more detailed and smoother this paint is going to be. Okay, so the red area is indicating that it has the most paint, and then as it goes out, obviously we have the least amount of paint areas here. Okay, so I can bring down the opacity here if I wanted to. I can soften up this edge. So if I brought this, say, down to 0 and I start painting, you can see that it's very blocky, okay? And then as 1, you can see it's a little more blurred, okay? Something like that. All right, so I can just paint this stuff, and it gets painted into this new attribute called mask. And if I middle mouse click here, or actually let's put on the eye icon down here, you can see that we now have a new point attribute called mask, which is a float, okay? So a couple different things I can do with that now. So now that I have that, let's go ahead and turn our camera, and let's go back to our material. So I can bring that attribute inside of my material operator here, okay? And the way I do that is something called a bind node, okay? So I can go ahead and lay down a bind node like so, and this bind node will ask you what was the name of that parameter. So for us, it was called mask, and what type was it, okay? And we had it as a float, but you can see we have a lot of things. If it was an integer, a vector, a color, all that kind of stuff, we can pick exactly what type of a piece of data that is, okay? So we can pick mask, and now we have it imported. So you can see that because it's a float, that's we can see masks now, and we get that color that indicates it's a float. So what I can do is in my layer mix here, I can just take that mask and I can go ahead and I can feed it right into the alpha channel here, okay? Because that alpha channel, if you hover over it, takes a float as well. So I can just connect that like so. And if I go ahead now, and if we go into the render view, let's go ahead and re-render this. So you see when I connected that, it grayed out my alpha. Now the mix is coming from our masked area here itself. Okay, so if we let this render for a minute, you should see that we get mostly the red plastic, but where we painted, we get that brick, and there we go. We get that brick coming out where we painted on our shader here. Okay, so that's a very powerful thing. I can go ahead and I can paint custom masks in here where maybe I want to have a certain shader come through, something like that. So it makes it very, very user-friendly and quick to do something like this. And again, I can add more layer masks. I can add another bind if I have multiple masks to make this more complex. Okay, so that's one way, is to paint. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, and I'll show you the second way that we can do a similar process in the next video. So we will see you then.